Whatever.
I am here at 2861 Buena Vista, and I'm lucky enough to have the architect of this house with me. I'd like to introduce you all to Robert Mueller. He built this wonderful house, and I'm going to start asking him a couple questions.
Please.
First of all, tell me about your inspiration. This house is pretty unique, so what was your inspiration?
Well, I went to school when modernism was very popular, and then that's sort of shifting now, where some kind of reference to classical things is emerging as a thing, as something real. And of course, we're in a neighborhood where Maybeck built houses. So some of the things I did were related to classicism, like the entry to the front, the opening, the Palladian entry with the columns. And then, of course, if you look on the bay that's sticking out here, that's pure Maybeck, the shapes and the gold tiles and stuff like that. And then inside, there was a tendency in modern to make one big space that you can see through. So when you're in the living room, you're really in the kitchen and all that kind of stuff. So I articulated the rooms as separate spaces. This is separate. It's got two purposes here, but then there's a dining room, it's a dining room, and then there's a living room, which is a living room, and then the staircase goes down. So there's separate articulated pieces that have their own identities. And as you move from one space to another, the scale changes, the ceiling changes.
I noticed the ceilings. Every ceiling, from the barrel vaulted ceiling in the entry to the more pyramid in the dining room, and then a beautiful beamed ceiling in the living room. So yes, so many beautiful ceilings here.
Yeah, and the thing in the living room is the beams are, or the trusses are load bearing, but the framing is actually across the trusses, and so it gives that feeling of sort of structural integrity because it's big pieces. And then in the room, you have the view out through archtop window, which is another sort of traditional classic touch. The idea is that when people come into the room, into the space, into the house, they recognize the forms. It's a language that, it's elaborate language that's been spoken for thousands of years. And so I took little pieces of that language and did things with it.
I saw those moments, not even just in the arched window, but I saw how you treated lots of little window moments with their own little portico and their own little detail above them. And even the closets have details above them. So the level of detail in all of those spaces of having them be their own sort of classical moment within a modern, newer construction.
Right. See, it is modern, but I wanted to read as forms that people recognize. I mean, you don't have to look at something and sort of imagine that you're supposed to imagine something because you're in a big open space. But here the elements are meant to be readable by people who are just, laymen, amateurs, they're not architectural critics, but when they move into a space like this, because of this language and because the language is sort of universal, if you can speak it, you gotta be able to speak it, then they recognize things.
So here's the tough question. Were there any challenges with this build that you had to overcome?
It's a piece of cake.
Such a beautiful details.
Because I'm an architect and I'm also a contractor, I know what it means to get details and I know what it means to draw them so that somebody can read them, and then I know that you're able to look at if they did it right. If they didn't do it right, they got to do it again. Real simple.
I imagine that happened a few times here.
It happens a few times. But because I know the language of both architecture and I'm also the owner, so I get to get it my way. That's the way it works.
That's great. So one last question, and that is, what do you think? We didn't change much because it was so beautiful, but we changed a few colors and a few light fixtures. What do you think of the changes that were done?
I think the changes are absolutely in tune with the spirit of the place. Very, very excellent. The things like the wallpaper in the bathroom, I wouldn't have necessarily thought about that, but the way the paper itself is nice, and the way you ended the paper up in the skylight well was absolutely in the spirit of the house, successfully done. So, and the colors and everything, very nice. Thank you.
thank you so much for spending the time here and to talking to me about this beautiful house. And I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so glad to get to represent this piece. And I do think it has a long-lasting legacy in Berkeley. So I hope that this house honors you in that legacy for many years.
Thank you.